Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro, depicts the tragic true story of wealthy Native Americans who were exploited by white people seeking their riches. Despite their temporary prosperity that reversed traditional power dynamics, this isn't a Native American success story, it's a tragedy. The film opens with a funeral ceremony where Native Americans mourn a deceased member, observed by a curious child through tent flaps as an elder speaks mournfully. This reveals the destiny of the Osage Nation, to be used by white settlers, robbed and slowly absorbed into white society, causing their decline and disappearance. The scene changes as people leave the dark tent for the open plains. They bury the dead man's pipe in dry, cracked ground where black oil bubbles and then shoots up from deep underground pressure. Strong young Native men, shirtless, dance wildly at this sudden great wealth, letting the black oil coat their skin. The music is upbeat and happy. The Native Americans celebrate this unexpected fortune. But this gift from the earth brings hidden danger. The Native Americans don't realize that in this time of weak laws and strong racism, this massive wealth would attract envy, theft, and deadly plans driven by greed. This starts the story of Killers of the Flower Moon. In the 1920s, the richest people per person in the world were the Osage Native Americans in Oklahoma, our main characters. In 1923, they owned about $400 million in wealth. They gained this because as white settlers kept coming to America, Native Americans were pushed to distant places. The Osage came to empty Oklahoma land and discovered rich oil beneath it. The oil-rich Osage became wealthy elites, living luxuriously like characters in The Great Gatsby, owning fancy cars, planes, and employing white drivers. This created resentment among poor white veterans who crowded trains seeking work in Osage territory. Ernest, Leonardo DiCaprio, a veteran in uniform, arrives confused at this job-seeking chaos. While well-dressed Osage step from cars, desperate white men compete for employment. Henry, a wealthy Native American driver working for Ernest's uncle, picks him up in a fancy red car, driving past countless oil towers that dominate the landscape, reminiscent of There Will Be Blood and symbolizing the wealth, greed, and violence to come. When Ernest asks who owns the land, Henry simply says busy car and continues driving. They reach a ranch where Ernest meets his Uncle Hale, a long-time trusted figure who serves as Fairfax's deputy sheriff. Hale explains his land has no oil, only cattle. Because there's no oil, there's no fear. Hale deliberately emphasizes, then Hale changes the subject, saying oil will eventually run dry, and the Osage Nation is sickly. At this moment, Hale drops some of his guard in front of his nephew, revealing his jealous attitude toward the Osage people. Perhaps to maintain his friendly image toward Native Americans, he says the Osage are good people with broad hearts, but they're always sickly. Ernest nods quietly, listening to his uncle talk. He doesn't grasp his uncle's hidden meaning yet. Then Hale, like doing a job interview, asks Ernest many questions, especially if he likes Native American women. Ernest likes all women. He's not choosy at all. This pleases Hale greatly. Through their talk, Hale slowly shows his real plans. He tells Ernest there's money to be made everywhere, but Ernest can't make small mistakes. If he causes problems, they should be big ones that bring real profit. Hale gives Ernest a driving job and a book about the Osage Nation, hinting at a wealth scheme through intermarriage, a common practice where white men married Osage women to steal their land rights. The film reveals systematic murders of Osage people aged 21 to 41, shown through Molly's narration. Scorsese directly shows a white man shooting an Osage woman and staging it as suicide before taking her baby, making clear that people like Hale orchestrate these marry-then-murder plots. We meet Molly, who needs a white guardian's permission to access her own money due to 1920s laws declaring Native Americans incompetent. This system enabled corruption. Whites overcharged Osage people, stole their money, and murdered them for property rights. Molly meets Ernest when he's driving passengers. Another passenger, Ernest's army friend, proudly calls his wife full-blood, pure Native American. Ernest tries impressing Molly with Osage knowledge but makes mistakes she corrects, sparking their relationship. As Molly becomes Ernest's regular passenger, Uncle Hale watches approvingly. At dinner, he mentions Molly's family and urges Ernest to court and marry her quickly, revealing the sinister plan. Molly is pure Native American whose father died, leaving only a sick mother, sisters, and lots of money. If Ernest acts right, the Native Americans' wealth could become theirs. This is legal, profitable, big business. With his uncle's help, Ernest starts chasing Molly, working hard to marry into a rich family. He carefully drives Molly around and takes every chance to flirt with her. Molly laughs at Ernest's efforts, calling him a greedy coyote in her language, while still watching him leave. Clearly, she knows Ernest wants money, but is still drawn to this somewhat reckless, good-looking white man. During this time, besides learning Osage culture, Ernest joins other white men wearing masks to rob wealthy Native Americans, then takes the stolen goods to gamble away. More white men marry and have kids with rich Native women. This has become white men's obvious way to get rich. At dinner, Molly shares her story. She has diabetes, lives with her sick mother, and has known Uncle Hale since childhood. She questions Ernest's intentions while he sweet-talks her, calling her skin beautiful. Molly calls him a greedy coyote in her language, which Ernest now understands and laughs at. After their stormy night conversation, they attend church and quickly develop their relationship. At gatherings, Osage sisters debate whether their white husbands want money or love. Molly's sister Minnie appears ill with dark circles under her eyes. At their wedding, Hale acts as witness, hypocritically claiming friendship with Molly's deceased father. He approaches the weak Minnie, asking about her health and praying for her, moving her to tears. Soon after, Minnie dies of wasting disease. At the funeral, Hale explains to Ernest that Minnie's land rights go to her husband, Bill Smith, who isn't on their side. Hale reveals his deadly plot. After Molly's mother dies, they'll wait for Rita, Anna, and Molly to die one by one, giving Hale all the family's oil wealth. When Ernest reports Molly's good health, Hale falsely wishes her well, then predicts that gun-carrying Anna will eventually die by accident. As Ernest and Molly have another son, meaning another land right, the deadly mathematics continue. One more family member must die. In the luxurious house, Molly's mother claims to see an owl symbolizing death. She tells Molly when Molly's mother asks about Anna, the drunk daughter arrives and argues with her white lover Byron. Byron tells Ernest he'll take Anna home, a deadly hint. Ernest calls Anna away from her mother's bedside and puts her in Byron's car. This becomes their final goodbye. Anna is found dead, requiring an autopsy. Another tribal member is also shot, prompting the Osage to bypass the unreliable state government and gather representatives from 25 tribes. They recognize that jobless white men are like vultures wanting to strip their nation bare. At the meeting, both Ernest and trusted friend Hale are present. Molly offers $5,000 to catch the killer, while Hale adds $1,000 but demands all clues go through him first. The Osage decide to send Barney to Washington, D.C. for federal help. Ernest discovers that Bill, who inherited Minnie's property, is now dating Rita, seeking even more wealth. At the funeral home, Ernest asks the white owner not to steal Anna's jewelry. The owner shows him a $1,650 coffin bill, 5 times the white rate, smugly defending the overcharging since Osage money flows up from the ground. Dead Anna left $100,000 to her family, but her guardian wants control, suggesting they use it for a town celebration. Molly coldly watches the exploitation, carrying grief and anger as she starts her own investigation. Meanwhile, Barney, sent to Washington for help, receives threats and is murdered by 2 white men. Molly's detective discovers that Anna was pregnant with Byron's child when he killed her, but lacks proof for arrest. Ernest, acting as spy, reports this to Hale, who sends him to destroy evidence by blowing up Anna's grave with grave robber Blackie. Ernest offers Blackie $1,000 plus his insured red Buick to kill Bill and Rita. However, when Blackie gets arrested for car theft, it delays Hale's plan. An angry Hale beats Ernest at church, blaming him for not controlling Molly, whose reward, money, and detective hiring threaten their scheme. As Molly's health worsens, Hale accelerates his poisoning plan, providing insulin while working with the town doctor to poison her. Ernest attacks the private detective to stop his investigation. Hale recruits poisoner, Billy, and bomb expert aces, while expanding targets to include Henry, who picked up Ernest initially. He forces the debt-ridden Henry to write a will favoring Hale and buys him life insurance, planning murder once policies activate. After Molly's mother dies peacefully, only Molly and Rita remain. At dinner, Pregnant, Molly unknowingly asks Mastermind Hale for help finding investigators. Hale angrily pushes Ernest to accelerate the elimination of Henry and others. Old John, originally just an errand runner, eagerly accepts killing Henry when learning he's Osage. Using bootleg liquor to befriend Henry, Old John shoots him in the back of the head during a liquor run. But this obvious murder fails to look accidental as Hale demanded. As another Native American dies, terrified Osage hang fear lamps outside homes and flee with families. Hale tries framing Roy Bunch for Henry's murder by advising him to run, but Roy refuses to leave, foiling the blame plan. After Molly gives birth, she visits Sister Rita, who recognizes the pattern. Minnie died from wasting illness. Mama died from it. Anna was shot, their families being systematically eliminated. Rita finds a dead lamb at her door, a death warning, and urges Molly to flee, but Molly stays, trusting Ernest. Bill, Rita's nervous husband, senses danger while chatting with Ernest. Not knowing Ernest is secretly planning their deaths, Hale leaves for a livestock show as his alibi. Ernest orders Old John to activate bomb expert aces. That night, a massive explosion destroys Rita and Bill's house, killing them and their maid. Ernest appears horrified, seemingly forgetting he delivered the kill order. While Molly breaks down, now the last family member alive, Hale cheerfully takes photos at the livestock show, viewing native deaths as mere obstacles to wealth. Determined to act, Molly withdraws $300 and decides to go to Washington, D.C. alone, believing it's her final chance before death. Very surprisingly, Molly's trip goes very smoothly. She meets the Indian Committee and even meets the U.S. President at the time, telling them about the series of Native American deaths in Osage and how she lost family members one by one. Molly receives promises from Washington, but her action terrifies Hale and his accomplices. They call Ernest and tell him to add chronic poison to the insulin and inject it into Molly daily. This time, Ernest must directly act against his wife. In their daily interactions, he can hardly avoid developing feelings for Molly. In his previous crimes, he always seemed to place himself in an executor's role, avoiding his guilt. Seeing Ernest's hesitation, Hale puts on a Godfather's kind face again and quotes the Bible, telling Ernest these medicines just make Molly slow down. That's all. Ernest still purses his lips and repeats, but everyone in the room clearly knows Ernest is going to kill Molly with his own hands. At this time, Molly begins to feel fear. She knows she's become prey and insists only Ernest touch her medicine. She even sees in her weakness the owl her mother told her about, symbolizing death's approach. Molly can only trust her husband, but Ernest has already followed Hale's instructions and added the slowing down medicine to her insulin. At this point in the story, Molly's door is finally knocked by investigators sent from Washington, D.C. by Hoover. The guilty Ernest uses Molly's illness as an excuse to delay the investigators' meeting with Molly. At night, townspeople dance to jazz music. With each Osage person's death, these white people who occupied their wealth are enjoying their revelry. In the surging crowd, panicked Ernest finds Hale, worried about his deeds being exposed. Hale puts on a calm front, telling Ernest everything is under control. But actually, the once steady Hale is already panicked. He immediately goes to the insurance company wanting to get Henry's compensation. But because Henry's death is full of suspicious points, the insurance agent refuses to pay. Now Hale's plan is completely ruined. He begins planning to sell his farm and considers fleeing. Meanwhile, he finds white accomplices involved in the murders and arranges for them to be arrested for other crimes or eliminated one by one. When the farm can't be sold immediately, he simply burns it down to defraud insurance money. Even at this point, Hale still covets Molly's family property. After all, he arranged to kill almost everyone in Molly's family. How can he give up at this crucial final moment? Hale finds Ernest and deceives and tempts him into signing a will stating that if Ernest has an accident, all property will belong to Hale. At this point, Ernest seems to understand that after eliminating Molly's family, he himself is the remaining obstacle to Uncle Hale obtaining massive wealth. Several investigators intensively investigate the Osage people's deaths. The fact that Hale and his accomplices killed Native Americans is so blatant, and the evidence so conclusive that despite core participants' intentional concealment and obstruction, investigators discover these arrogant murders and the conspiracy to embezzle Native American property just by talking to townspeople with some conscience. Hale and these white young men have designed the murders of dozens of Osage people. Some even stated without burden that as long as they can obtain Osage head rights and property, they can unhesitatingly kill their own children with Native Americans. The deadly sons-in-law are arrested one by one. Ernest and others involved in the murders are all sent to trial, where they will face prosecution by the Bureau of Investigation. The poisoned Molly is also rescued when her life hangs by a thread. Actually, at this point, the film has run for 2.5 hours and everything's very clear. In the following hour, the film somewhat tediously shows through court proceedings how these killers were tried, how stubborn Hale was, how Ernest wavered back and forth on whether to testify against Uncle Hale, and how unjust the justice system was in giving these white men light punishments. Later, Ernest attempts to confess and atone to Molly after seeing her. The much-recovered Molly asks Ernest if he has honestly told everything. Ernest still purses his lips and says, yes, he has told everything. Perhaps due to remaining conscience, perhaps harboring love for Molly and the children, or perhaps to reduce his sentence. He reveals all of Hale's crimes, but deliberately omits the part about personally poisoning Molly. Molly looks at Ernest and calmly asks, Killers of the Flower Moon could have ended there, but the director doesn't handle it this way. Instead, at the film's end, he uses a radio drama format to pose a question. As story narrators, do we have the right to turn others' tragedies into entertainment? The film ends with white people on stage telling each character's fate to an all-white audience. The town doctor faced no sanctions. Byron escaped punishment due to jury disagreement. Hale received life imprisonment, but was paroled after only 20 years by befriending Osage people in prison and bribing politicians. He lived to 87 with Osage friends attending his funeral. Ernest was also paroled and spent his later years in Osage territory with Byron. Molly died of diabetes at 50. Director Martin Scorsese appears, reading a prayer for Molly and urging Americans to remember crimes against the Osage people. The title Killers of the Flower Moon symbolizes how May's blooming flowers on Osage land were choked by weeds, representing how outsiders greedily plundered Osage wealth and life. The original book has 3 parts: Molly's investigation, the FBI's birth from this case's obstacles, and interviews with current Osage descendants. The story shocks not through suspense, but by exposing blatant white crimes that America never effectively stopped or punished. Ironically, when the film was released, Oklahoma was legislating to erase this history from education, claiming it would make students feel racial inferiority. Local libraries even hid the novel. Over 20 states have passed similar laws, with a 2023 PEN report showing 33% increase in banned books. Even Nobel Prize winners aren't exempt. More strangely, Florida schools are now teaching kids that black slaves gained from slavery because they learned useful work skills. This is both funny and deeply sad. After Killers of the Flower Moon showed at the Cannes Film Festival, Oklahoma's Lieutenant Governor Matt asked everyone to go to theaters to support the movie, hoping to bring tourists to the area and help tourism. A reporter directly asked that, if this film is so important that people worldwide should see it, why can't Oklahoma's public schools face this history? The governor awkwardly said that it might be time to fix the legal rules. It sounds good, but the state government did nothing for the next 5 months. This slowly created strong public anger and continued media focus. People from all areas began talks and protests, asking the government to officially fix problems in history education and respect and share indigenous history and culture. Facing growing social pressure, some teachers, though worried about possibly losing their jobs, still chose to stand with the truth and decided to bring this history into the classroom. They believe that through education, they can build a generation with better understanding with each other. There are people who keep fighting for the righteous regardless the circumstances.